Hi everyone, in this video we're going to, we're up to here in the study design, so we're going to look at the actual key management skills. Now you can see here that it says key management skills as appropriate to the process of effective management. There are no specific skills that you need to know according to this study design, but there are a few, and you'll notice probably in your textbook that there are quite a few that that are really common to all the textbooks, and we're going to go through all of them in the next few videos. We then need to look at the relationship between those management skills and what we've done in the previous videos in management styles. So we'll start off with our management skills. So first of all, these are the ones we're going to go through. So communication, negotiation, time management, delegation, problem solving, decision making. We'll sort of use them as the same skill, and we'll look at a particular problem solving process or decision making process, and then teamwork and stress management. So this video, first of all, will cover communication and negotiation. So your definition: the transmission of information from one or more persons in a way that ensures the recipient's understanding. Now that's in an ideal world. Sometimes you'll communicate and the recipient won't fully understand what it is that you're saying, and we'll go through some ways in how to ensure that can actually happen. So this stuff's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, we communicate every day. There's just 4 examples that happen in business through meetings, whether they be planned or unplanned. Emails, faxes, phone calls, reports, memos, websites, and anything in between. Now it's important, we'll get into this more later, but the type of communication will often change depending on the actual management style that's being used. So when we spoke about autocratic management style and persuasive management styles, they were quite poor communication where it was one way. But the other management styles, there was two-way communication. So that's one of the relationships between the two. The more levels, so the taller or more bureaucratic the organisational structure is, that can also determine how effective communication is. So sometimes if you want to get a message, there's lots of different levels in the management structure. To get it from the top through to the workers, it can often be difficult because the message can be lost as it travels through different levels of management. But the flatter the structure, and maybe possibly the more team-based the structure is, often the more effective the communication is. It's easier because it's not going through as many people to get from top to bottom of the organisation. Communication can be, there should be a space between that, it can be formal, informal, verbal and non-verbal. So formal is where it's directly related to the organisation activity, so that's your official appraisals, any official meetings or a job interview, memorandums, anything like that. Informal is where sort of gossip and your facial expressions and your networking. Verbal is your oral communication, so as I'm speaking to you now, that's verbal. Can be both ineffective and effective, so that's important to know that just because it's verbal doesn't mean that it's always effective. And non-verbal is your body language, tone of voice, and also the setting that it's in. So that's just a bit of background on communication. There can often be problems between communication, especially when there's cross-cultural communication. It's important that if you're a manager and dealing with organisations from another country, that you sympathise with their culture and you actually take on their culture. And because Australia is such a multicultural, diverse country, we have lots of employees that come from different cultures, and so it's important to understand that there will be cultural differences in the workplace, and you need to really sympathise with that and deal with that. Negotiation is the next management skill that we're going to go through. So that is the process of reaching an agreement through discussion and compromise, and we hope for a win-win situation. Now, the reason for that is because when you're negotiating, you want it to be positive for the other party as well as yourself, because you may want to negotiate with them again. If it becomes win-lose, let's say you lost in one of the negotiations and came out of it quite poorly, you wouldn't want to negotiate with that person or that organisation again. So you want win-win to keep the strong relationships going. When negotiating, managers, these are just a few things that managers should do. So if you ever go into a negotiation, these are some of the things that you should do as part of your preparation. So set limits before you actually enter the negotiation. So have an idea of what you want and the point where you were actually losing. Because if you don't, and you figure that point afterwards, then there's a fair chance that you come out of that negotiation losing. Putting yourself in the other party's shoes, that can give you an idea of what they actually want, and you can go in prepared and have an idea of what they actually want and what you're offering them and whether they would accept that. Negotiation in good faith, that's really important, especially when it comes to negotiating with employer relations, negotiating wages and working conditions, that you're actually there to get a fair deal. That's what that is referring to. You're not just going in there saying, well, I'll pretend to negotiate, but I'm not going to budge on what my stance is. But you're actually going there in good faith to try and develop an outcome. Important to listen actively and acknowledge what's being said from the other party, so it's not just all one way. You're not just pretending to listen, you're actually listening to what they're saying and hearing what they want. And then build a working relationship with the other party is also really important. So they're some of the major steps in negotiating. Now, with all these skills, it is important that common questions that will ask, how can a manager use a management skill for this scenario? So that's really important, that you're able to describe how managers will use a particular skill, and often you'll have to choose the skill, how they can use that particular skill to help them in that situation, whatever the situation is in the case study used.